Yeah, I'd like to call the meeting for the January 10th, 14-mile Alliance, Watershed Alliance meeting to order at 2:05. Looks like we've got our good Zoom setup going again. Thank you, Rachel. Barb, you can confirm, or why don't we start with roll calls?
Okay, Barb, you're right here.
Phil Rockin, like
Dave Trudeau.
Jerry Wisner.
Okay, can you
Thank you.
confirm the posting?
Oh, am I supposed to say something?
Oh, I'm sorry, Karen.
Okay, well, I'm here, but virtually.
It looks like Bob Binkowski's on also.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you want
Bob, are you with us today?
Bob Binkowski, are you with us?
I am here.
Okay, very good, thank you. Okay, everybody should have seen the minutes from the December 13th meeting. Does anybody have any additions, corrections?
Motion to approve as presented.
Motion to approve, and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Announcements, not too much. I did see on my email just before coming to the meeting, 14-mile Watershed Alliance newsletter came to my email this morning, so that's, so make sure to read that. That has some good information in it.
I assume Karen sent that out.
Karen, did that come through you?
No, Phil sent
Oh,
some.
Phil did.
Bill?
Doesn't go through me, yeah.
Thank you.
Other than that, Don Easted took off today for the Sonoran Desert, so maybe he'll be able to join us remotely for some of the subsequent meetings, but I'm sure today he's trying to get as far south as he can before holding up for tonight, so. Next on the agenda is the presentation by Scott and Colton. Scott is still in the process of setting up a bit, so why don't we move on to the next item? Was Kyle joining us remotely? I didn't see.
Kyle is not remotely, not that I've seen. No.
Okay.
He's
You
all
don't,
sick.
you don't have any insight to where Kyle's
Not since we,
goings on right now concerning the 90 element?
not since we had our meeting, a few days ago last week. Just working on getting contacts put together, and since he's new, definitely getting outreach and just kind of learning the watershed and setting up a plan for this year. So that's where he's at right now, mapping a
We
lot.
had a meeting, what, about 10 days ago with our board members with Kyle, and he's really jumping in with both feet, and he's got some great GIS skills that he's got things planned with you click on a slide on the map and all kinds of
The
great
story
stuff
map,
pops up.
yeah.
Yeah. Glad to have that kind of next, just we had a good session with Drew Watermelon about engaging in the community. Anybody who might have missed that session, I think it was recorded and it's on
I think Karen posted it.
posted the website or the
I didn't get,
Facebook or
well, it was posted on Facebook, but I didn't get I don't have any kind of a MP4 copy of it to put on YouTube, if that's what you mean. Or even on Facebook, I need that.
Karen,
Yeah,
that Google folder that you have access to that has past recordings. It
Is it
should
in
be in that file for you.
Okay,
Yep,
I'm sorry. I never check on that, so I'm gonna have to figure that out. I'm sorry.
that's
I
all right.
will-
I'll resend you the link.
Okay, I'll post that for sure today. And then I'll post it on Facebook as well.
Can you send me the link to that Google Drive?
I
as
sure,
well?
yeah, I'll just send it to the group.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can extract the presentations and put those on the website.
Perfect.
that'd be great.
Ah, I see.
Okay, Einstein, I got, I'm not on Wi-Fi, but how do I get the PowerPoint up there?
What you're gonna do is email it to me
Oh,
and then
no.
I'll pull it up. I'd say keep going ahead with the agenda until.
Okay. Scott's getting closer to his PowerPoint presentation.
We're trying to do, there's too many to wait.
We're ready to share, so. Let's go with our committee reports. Karen, can we start with you? And Rachel, can you get any more volume from Karen by any chance?
I sure can here. It would be on this computer.
Did you ask me something? I just stepped away for a minute.
We're just turning up your volume, Karen.
Okay.
Can you give us an update on outreach?
Sure, I just unmuted as I said that. Basically, I'm working right now still with Nakusa High School, trying to get that all set up. From what I understand, now they told me before the holiday that we could try to get together after the holiday. I contacted everybody at the high school. So there's a group of people that I'm actually have on my email. And let me also do my video. And I basically got a response from Gus, who basically wants to get together with me in February. He's going to be back. I don't know where he is, but he's going to be back at the beginning of February. So hopefully we'll be able to get together and get this going and do something with Nakusa High School. So that's one of the outreach. The other thing I did is I touched base with Kyle Kettner and sent him all of the artwork that I have on the brochure. So hopefully we'll be able to get that going as well. So I'm working on those two things right now.
Do you have any information on other dates for Winters Farmers Markets that we want to try to attend and we have?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that very much, Dave, because this week on Friday is another farmer's market. Unfortunately, I cannot be there. I didn't know that prior to just this week. Because when as I've told you, I'm helping my son. We don't know, we're waiting on deliveries and all. So we don't know when we're going to be doing things. But it looks like we just found out actually yesterday that, actually it was this morning, that we would be able to stay here through the weekend. So if somebody could do the farmer's market on Friday, that would be great. I think Bob had mentioned.
Karen, Bob, and I are planning to take that part.
Oh, wonderful. That's great. So I'm hoping I will be back. I should be. It doesn't take that long to build out something. Hopefully I'll be back by February's farmer's market. But I will post that on Facebook today that I wasn't sure if anybody was going to be there, that the farmer's market will be this Friday. And it's from, remind me, Phil, it's from something to 3 p.m.
12 to 3 or 3:30?
Noon to 3:30. Okay, I've got the email. I'll look it up, but it will be the Winters Farmers Market at the town hall for anybody who wants to come from noon to 3:30. And then I don't think there's really, I think that's it. That's what I'm working on right now.
Karen, a question. Do you have plans to establish like a doodle, is it a doodle poll? To get people to sign up for the winter farmer's market?
There's only, well, how many are there left? There's only like 3 more left, right?
What?
I can
February,
do
March.
that. I can do that.
April, does it start outdoors in April?
I think it starts outdoors in May.
So there's at least 3 more.
Right, there's 3 more. I will be happy to do that, Phil. That's a great idea.
Okay, and like to get some other people to participate if possible.
And again, I'm sorry I haven't been there at these. I will definitely be there when I can. So hopefully starting February, I'll try to be there at the last 3.
May I just suggest that we take a look at the traffic for this January one and see if it's gonna be worthwhile to do any more of them? Because the traffic was slow in December and that was pre-holiday. Now you're after holiday. It'd be interesting to see what kind of traffic we have.
Good point.
All right, we'll report back after
I mean,
our remarks.
just so you know, Bob, we paid money to be at this farmer's market this year. So I think we should just kind of gauge it after we see how it is for the entire season.
Okay,
So I
You wanna
think,
you want to spend money that way? Go ahead.
yeah, well, we already paid it, so we can't get it back. But thank you. It's great suggestions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Is that a wrap for you?
That's a wrap. Thank you very much.
I have an outreach item I'd like to bring up. I think we all received a copy of the Central Wisconsin Farm Property Building Expo that Rachel sent out. I think Dave or Don sent it out again. I had reached out to Anna and Kyle to see if we put together a list of the 14-mile growers yet. My thought was we should take and create an email or letters and send this out to all those growers. And I think it would be money well spent if 14 Mile would fund the cost of sending these people $18 per person to this expo.
I think that's
Educational outreach to these growers.
That's a great idea.
Excellent idea.
Excellent idea.
I think Kyle's still working on putting together the list.
He is, and I know, when is that? The Central-
February 15th.
I don't know if they'll have an exact contact list put together by then, but what we can do is we can post something about it on our page. You guys can post about it too.
How many of the growers?
Right,
That's the people we need to reach now. Is the growers.
right. Adams County, we have it's a Facebook page for Adams County farmers. So we can say that if you're in the 14-mile watershed and this is something you're interested in, reach out to 14-mile watershed. A lot of the growers in the big grocery, so like Heartland, Bula's, they overlap. They are in 14-mile, they have land in 14-mile.
You've got Mortensen, there's several other
Yes,
big growers
right.
that we definitely should target.
Right, so what I can do is I can bring that up to the farmers of the Rocha Cree, even though they're involved in that group. But they still overlap, a lot of them do. So if that's something you guys are interested in, I can surely mention it. I know we have contacts at Mortensen that we can reach out to as well.
Well, the reason I like Jerry's idea is because then we're not paying for people who aren't necessarily in the 14-mile watershed.
Well,
If that makes any sense.
right,
We're only
right,
gonna pay for growers, not lake people that wanna go to the expo. I think.
Right, the growers that are in the 14-mile watershed, right. So we want to make sure we target, right?
Right. If we need a motion, I'll make a motion that we fund the cost of sending the growers to this farm expo, property building expo.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Uh,
Motion passes.
So Anna, if you could help get the word out or give us a list.
we'll try to put something together. I'll definitely.
Either mail in and send this out
What's the date on that again, Jerry?
February 15th from 9:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. to Wisconsin Rapids, State Tech College. Lunch is included for $18. And it's got money wells.
Agreed, agreed.
Bringing it up.
The popcorn gallery here.
Tickets and mail them to these people? Would that be the way to approach it?
So I can't answer that question. So when you would go on to register, there's an online form, and down at the bottom, when it says payment, you can select, credit card, whatever you're doing, or there's an other option, and then you just type in. So I'll just create a generic statement that says, being covered by 14-Mile Watershed Alliance. And then that will go into mid-states because they're handling all the registration for the event. And so that'll go into their system, and then they know to invoice the Alliance directly.
Oh, okay.
that would be great.
Cool. Excellent. Perfect.
Better idea than I did.
Well, that way we only pay for people who actually attend.
Right.
Right. Okay. Beautiful. Thank you.
And then John wanted to say something, John Andresi.
I put it on the chat, but I would suggest that possibly you might consider including the cranberry growers also. They're a big part of what's going on out there with our water.
Very true.
Good point.
I sent you a couple times, it keeps going bounce back. You got a flash drive, you can just transfer it that way.
Let's see here. I wonder what's.
Okay, Phil, you want to go on with
I'm gonna try this, I got one from.
what's happening with our water testing and over the winter months? The interns?
Well, we did complete the December testing,
Yeah.
December 28th. Dave and I, as well as
It's the same one.
Dave Coiler, who's a new volunteer to the testing effort. We're out there, and we also were able to get 2 of our interns out there. And we all tried to stay warm. It's about 15 degrees. Okay. And I think.
And we were able to take flow readings at most of the sites. We have one that was just going to be too cold. The one
At the end,
the one at the end where we've got the 2 ditches coming together and each one has about 24, 25 stages.
yeah. So we, we're continuing the program, and the interns are enthusiastic, and I think we're very helpful. So we're going to try the same approach in January. Hopefully we can find a weekend with a January thaw, something around 32 degrees
With a little bit of luck.
and we can coordinate it with our interns. So that's all I have on that.
Okay, on our environmental quality, the grants we've got in surface water grants right now for healthy lakes and the education grant. We're just on hold until about mid-March. Those grants will be awarded. I have every confidence that we'll get both of those fully funded, but we'll wait and see. We're on hold in the meantime. But also as part of next month's meeting in February, we're planning on kind of pulling together the ideas, our accomplishments, our budget. So be thinking about that and how the grants will play into that. In the grant application, but on the education side, we have a lot of items lined out in there. I think we have about $12,000 in projects, and we're looking for about 5,000 for the grant. So we've got plenty to do there, and we come up with a couple additional ideas for outreach since we applied for that grant last November. So be thinking about that. That's about it. Scott, are you ready to go?
I think so.
I think we're good to
Okay, why
go.
don't we put a hold on our committee reports for now and have you and Colton give us an update on the denitrification project. my understanding, you also went and gave a presentation to the drainage board, or at least talked to them about.
Yeah, right, there were some, John asked, and Jesse is on the drainage district board and asked if it's coming. They were just curious, particularly one person was, as to what was gonna happen with that one ditch that goes through the middle.
I'm sure anytime we talk about raising the water level, somebody's always concerned about whether it might impact their drainage.
Exactly, and after you just walked them through it, I think they understood that it's, they got a copy of it and shows that, basically, I'll show you when we get going here. But just wanna, for people who don't know what's going on, we wrote a project last year to fund, just to do some groundwater study out there at where Leola Rock is out there, and or Owen Rock on Leola Marsh. We all met out there to do this in the field, kind of a tour with PVGA and Wisconsin Wetlands Association, all kinds of other folks. And a lot of that was set up by 14 Mile Creek Watershed Alliance. And then what the deal was is, can you go to the next slide? Or the deal was what we're looking to do is put those yellow dots are monitoring wells, and the two vertical blue lines are ditches that are man-made. They're artificial ditches that were dug by the previous owner. They're not part of the lake district, part of the drainage district. And then that rectangle actually increased in size. So we're testing the whole area now, and that whole area is surrounded by drainage ditch. So it's like it's got a moat going all the way around it. So whatever we do internally won't affect anybody else around it. So it's a perfect place to do this. Groundwater generally flowing from the northeast to southwest. And what we're hoping to do is take advantage of these organic soils in here. Can I have the next slide, please? See, our soil series out there consists of stuff like this. It's called Adrian series or Adrian muck. At one time, that was all wetland out there, and that organic layer could have been several feet thick. It still is in some areas. We've had up to 3 feet. It could have been 6 feet out there. So when you're walking around out there, before that area was drained, you probably would have been about waist deep in sediment. That's how much has been lost. That organic stuff is either dried up, blown away, burnt up from fire, or actually, because now it's got air in there, it went up in the atmosphere as carbon, that's CO2. So these kind of soil, these wetland soils are great banks to harbor carbon, but they with all that carbon in there, it also acts as a, I would say catalyst, but it's important in a nitrification, denitrification process. Bacteria in an anaerobic environment, as long as there's plenty of food and everything, will take the nitrate, the NOx, and gobble up that oxygen, scavenge that oxygen off it, and then it goes to nitrogen gas. Nitrogen gas goes up in the atmosphere where it belongs. 78% of our atmosphere is nitrogen. That's where it belongs, not in our groundwater. So the idea is the wildlife is grazing that area right now with cattle to keep secession down, keep it prairie chicken type of ecosystem out there. It's being used by plenty of prairie chickens, short-eared owls, some really cool stuff. There's the Franklin ground squirrels out there. I actually saw them one day. It scared me. But so it's a neat area, and the cows that they're grazing out there and trying different experiments with, they need to move them around. But there was no places to move around because of those central laterals that were there. The idea was to plug them. Well, she wanted to bridge them, and I said, well, hey, let's work together on this. And we won't bridge them. Let's plug them, so that way we can maybe raise that water table up in the area, so it's So instead of being in that white sand underneath, it'll be, we want to get that water table up into that black organic layer, into that muck, so that we can get the denitrification to occur. Can I have the next one, please? So here's that nitrogen cycle. So we get nitrogen, it's all over the atmosphere, right? We apply it on our crops, we apply it on our yards, we apply it everywhere. It starts cycling. The plants, when it comes in on a form of like manure or something like that, or human waste or fertilizer, not so much fertilizer, but it's in a organic form where it's tied up. You have to break down everything around to release that nitrogen. That's where you're decomposing. Fungus and bacteria do that. And well, it goes to ammonium, or it can go to ammonium, depending on the oxygen concentration, or go to nitrites, which is NO2. That's not stable. It's going to go to NO3 nitrates fairly quick. So if we have the denitrifying bacteria on the upper right there, going to work in that buried organic stuff, where that flooded, where that water is, we can get that nitrogen to go up in the atmosphere, and that's the goal. What you'll notice is that this is not new science. This whole nitrification process has been with us forever. But what really tipped us off to it all here was the sampling that you guys started under Dresdy when he was involved with it. They were, we're noticing a drop in nitrogen, really high nitrogen nitrate numbers in the streams up to over 15 parts per million, which is crazy high for surface water. That's super, super high. It should be less than 0.3. So you're what, 100 times, almost 50 times higher than that in some stretches. But then when it got to those cranberry reservoirs, it started to drop out after that. So the cranberry reservoir being shallow, very organic, so hey, maybe there's some denitrification occurring there. And that's what so that's like, let's try this and see if we can, if it works, then maybe we can try find some of these other marginal lands where this could be employed to reduce the nitrogen load coming into tri-lake. So I think one thing is really important. Wisconsin for years pounded on phosphorus all over. And we did everything about phosphorus. And the other states were working around us, Minnesota, specifically Iowa, Illinois, all the other states from Michigan are looking at nitrogen and phosphorus. But we just kind of ignored nitrogen. We still do in a lot of cases. And we shouldn't, because the nitrogen is very important in aquatic plants as well as phosphorus. Phosphorus is important more. We should be concerned about that with the algae growth. That's important. But nitrogen is a really important element for biomass, producing a lot of, instead of having like a plant this big around, it gets this big around when you add nitrogen. A lot of your aquatic plants are monocots, just like corn and and grass. And grass, corn, they love nitrogen. You can't give it, just eat that stuff right up. So, and with the blue-green algae blooms, nitrogen we're finding out is a much more important role than what we originally thought. So it was just Wisconsin's convention to concentrate on phosphorus, not do much about nitrogen. Now they're trying to, we did this for decades and trying to get people to, switch over. So, hey, don't forget about its evil twin. There's still some, some resistance to that. But we're working forward on it, and we're hoping, the more monitoring we get with nitrogen, we can learn more how important a role that plays in Wisconsin. I'm already convinced it's huge and we're missing the boat on it. So, but that's my soapbox for that. I'll go to the next one, please. Thanks, Rachel. So this is an easy schematic. We're gonna, over to your left is what was before we plug those ditches out there. That blue line is like the buried organics. And the water tables just below it are just nicking the bottom. So what you do is you plug those on the right, you plug the ditch. We didn't use a control structure, we just plugged them. And in multiple areas, that water is now not going to be able to shed in between, only around that moat that I spoke of earlier. And we're hoping that raises that water into that rich organic soil. And that's where we can get the denitrification to occur. So can I have the next one? So here's where we're at now. So Kate, Colton and I go out once a month and we grab these samples. And these are averages of nitrate, nitrite. We're just going to call it nitrate because very little of it's actually nitrite. NO2, it's almost all NO3. But when you, just so you guys all know, when I say nitrates, I'm including nitrite as well. So we look at some of these numbers and I mean, we're to 8, 1, 1's not bad. It should be below 2. Anything above 2 is considered some type of human influence or something like that. But look at that one over there on the right, 74.6 milligrams per liter. Even that one all the way over to the east there, 23.5, the one in the lower right, 14.9. You couldn't legally put a public well in that. That's the enforcement standard for municipal water supplies, 10 parts per million. That's how much higher you are. What's really shook me up or got my attention a little bit is phosphorus is low in all these, except for that hot one there and the number 2 well, the 74.6 milligrams per liter of nitrate. It was 0.1 to 125 micrograms per liter, 0.125 milligrams per liter. That's pretty high for groundwater out here. We got a lot of iron in the soil and it kind of binds up that phosphorus, but I don't know what's going on there. We got but we only got 6 data points. So you can't draw much of a conclusion on that. And the other thing too is since we started monitoring, we put the wells in, it was pretty dry in August, and we actually went down. Our water elevations went down. So that's the opposite thing we want to occur. We want the water table to come up, and we can't control that. So it varied from depending on which well, 6 inches to just under a foot for the range that the water table has dropped so far. So we get a night, hopefully we get a spring and a wet spring, raise that water table up, get it into that, get those soil temperatures up about 40 degrees. That's an important factor. You want your soil temps up over 40 degrees so you get the bacteria action working. And hopefully, we'll see some denitrification going on there. So the goal would be to eventually raise that up and see those high numbers dwindle and decrease as you go to the east, or excuse me, to the west, sorry. If we start seeing that and we can get some more data and find some more things, we're planning on doing a lot more data that we need to get for this, and we'll find out if it's a feasible activity to try elsewhere. When you look around there and you see all those plowed fields with that real black, these are colored photos, but that black is that's all organics. It's a great place to go birding in springtime if you haven't been out there. So those fields are covered with swans, geese, ducks, eagles, everything. They're all out there.
What's the north-south road on the right side there?
The right side is County Highway W, and on the north is County Highway D.
All right, so we've just had significant amount of tiling go in there just this fall then too. That
we're going to talk about that real quick.
We want to talk about that before you leave.
Yeah, I suppose you do. So if you look all the way further to the west outside that project area, you'll notice that reservoir there. That's where we noticed we're using nitrogen, which is a good thing. So those reservoirs seem to be like a giant reactor and get rid of that nitrogen before it comes to the lake, which is a good thing. And get rid of some of it, not all of it. Okay, the next slide, Rick.
Yeah, those north-south ditches, one of those goes all the way up to D, does not?
Sorry.
No, you're good.
So the ones, these go north and south. And these, this one, there's a break, it's on the other side of the road. But then you got this one, the big one, Leola ditch is up here. And then this other one down here, this is a slower moving one on a long patch.
That's ditch 4.
Okay, ditch 4, yeah. These are the ones that were plugged because those are private, they weren't part of the drainage district.
You're only showing them going halfway up. Don't, I know one of those goes all the way up to D. You're not gonna plug.
That one up that goes up to D actually stops just before it.
Mhm.
This one over here is not, but that's not on our property. And we don't want to plug that one because it could affect this property owner here. We don't want to do that. If it affects these people, we don't care because that's us too.
You're only plugging those south and the
Yeah,
southern.
these right here to prevent water from flowing out. Well, and this ditch here doesn't go up to all the way to Leola anyway. No. So they're just kind of like long linear lakes. All right, can I have them? So, just remember, we're working with Adams County again on this as well. You guys, we talk with Phil when they're out there sampling and getting data. Without getting the data from you guys, in the past, everything that you and John and everybody, that we wouldn't be here right now. So, because of your data, we're using that to help us determine what the heck is going on, what we can do to help decrease the nitrogen. But every time we do that, remember folks, that's reactive. We're not being proactive there. Whether we try some denitrification projects on that tiling that you want to talk about, it's power tiling where they have the tiles come in and it's pumped directly from the pipe into the creek. It's all concentrated in that one thing. Well, and I first saw that like, you gotta be kidding me. And I was thinking about it, it's like, maybe that's an opportunity because now that they're collecting all that tiled water to one spot, we do have those other devices they use in Illinois and Iowa, where they, at those points, they'll put these boxes of carbonaceous carbon material. It could be bark, it could be reactive carbon, charcoal, whatever, to try to denitrify that water coming through. And you can also add these other devices for phosphorus attenuation. So maybe it's not such a bad thing that instead of just draining by gravity out to some other lateral vent to it, we're going to concentrate it all to one spot. We might be able to work with them to do something on that. But again, that's reactive. The other option is one thing we talked, John and I brought up with the Adams County drainage district with their Leolas. What about some of those drainage ditches? Can we do what they call a two-tiered ditch where you have your main drainage, but then like a floodplain out and you put carbonaceous material, basically bark, along the side of that. So when the water comes up, there's your carbon source for denitrification. Something, again, that's reactive. But this is where Adams County is going to come into play on the proactive, and this is what we need. We need to figure out, and I know Kyle's already looking into some of this stuff, is refine the nitrogen use, and maybe you do it by precision ag or any other practice. So the farmer doesn't want to add any more nitrogen than he has to. They're costing money. If it's not gonna benefit the plant, their crop, then why would they add it? So, and you saw what Heartland was doing out there, how they were managing it. That's not the norm by any stretch. But if you get more folks like that, that's gonna help. That's proactive, getting ahead of it. If you want to eliminate the nitrogen contamination, don't put nitrogen on. But you're gonna have to. So the point is, how do we minimize the loss of that nitrogen to groundwater? And the other biggie here is the reduction of nitrogen on the lawns. The amount of nitrogen still being applied around the lakes out here directly so close to the water is still sky high. You're right up there when you look at the application rates, you're way higher than pounds per acre. When you look at the subdivisions, way higher than any ag field. I think Wally said it best. He's there, some of those lawns that they tested that you guys did. There's enough nitrogen on it equivalent to 1,000-pound steer per property. That's a lot of bull crap coming on there. That's a lot of nitrogen. And that's, that's significant, right? And I brought this up before, and I know you heard it, and I'm gonna tell you again. And if you're out there in a pontoon boat cruising around and you saw a cow in every one of those instead of a green lawn, would that cause alarm or give you pause? Most likely it would. But when you drive by and you see green grass, and it's like, oh, isn't that pretty? Isn't that nice? Yeah. It's no different than a freaking 1,000-pound steer crapping all over the place. So those are, where I think this Kyle being in that position, and then with Anna keeping them on the straight and narrow, they'll be able to, she's gonna have her job cut out for her there, that's for sure. We can reduce some of the nitrogen inputs and start, I'm really excited about what's gonna happen in the next couple of years. So can I have a final slide? I think? So here's our next steps. We're going to continue monitoring because we got 6 data points now, all different ground. That's not enough to do anything. We're going to be mapping the depth of buried organics. I haven't told Colton any of this, so he's finding out about this right now. He's probably
You're telling him about his workload right now.
yeah. Well, I'll help him. It's terrible. He doesn't like I harassed the shit out of that kid when we were on the field. So but anyway, we got to map the depth of buried organics, find out where the water table is in relation to that, find out how much saturation we really have. Is it 20% of the surface area? Is it 40%? We don't know that. And that's an important number we need to know. I would like to survey in the well elevation so we can do some good groundwater modeling, even if it's on paper. But that I'll end up surveying it because I know we don't have the money to hire a surveyor to come out there to get the order of accuracy we need on the top of the wells. But Cole and I are a lot cheaper than a surveyor. What's the accuracy on it?
That's what we use for all our cat drawings and stuff.
But is it for the vertical? Horizontal is really great, but the vertical.
Right.
And
So I would have to check with.
yeah, that'd be great. If you got good accuracy on it, then that'd be very helpful to save hours and hours of time. But once we get those, if we get well elevations, MSL, we can easily map the flow paths and groundwater out there, create. And this would a simple, what they call two-dimensional groundwater model would be very easy to do here. I mean, that was easy back in grad school. When I was in grad school, and that was like a couple of years ago. Yeah, so like the early 90s, and we were mapping groundwater back then with computer. So yes, Marty. And then we're gonna. And then I already sent the email out to a few folks. Like, you guys are doing a ton of stream monitoring. When do we have enough data that say, hey, we got a good baseline now? Take a break. And then when we start implementing things out there with the 9 key, we can go, and then we're going to want to monitor it again, but it's going to be a kind of pre-post type thing or see how things change. But this continual monthly sampling, I got to run them past Pat Oldenburg, use the brains behind everything, and have him see what he thinks if we can reduce the sampling out there for the surface water. Groundwater sampling is going to continue, and if not, maybe even increase. Let's see, where was I? Oh yeah. If we can get we really got to pound this, reduce the nitrogen application on yards. If we're gonna go up and ask these egg producers to limit nitrogen on them, then why are we? It's the same old thing as phosphorus, but again, because Wisconsin was nitrogen blind for so many years, it just fell by the wayside. Now we got to go back and tell everybody, oh, it's just got to do the same thing for nitrogen too. I don't know why they just didn't bring in carbon right away too, and get them all done with at once, but that'll be the next generation concern. And then, you know, might want to monitor for phosphorus some other places, just because I had that high number. But when I look at all your water quality data, phosphorus is not a problem on tri lakes. It's you border right on the line of the standard for type of lakes you have. You're right at that border, sometimes above, sometimes below, but it's not screaming high. And your reactive phosphorus, which what the algae really likes, very, very low. You know, when some of those, when we were getting information from some of those companies about like Swirl X and they know the Triangle Lake, we actually talked with those manufacturing companies. And I think you guys grabbed samples for that.
That was for the Northwestern
Yeah.
University study.
Yeah, and Northwestern, they got the samples, Pat and I were on the phone with them, and then they got those samples, they're like, we can't help you. It was their technology, and they're saying, we can't help you. It's not like the DNR said, oh, we're not gonna do this. The company said, this is not feasible, you're already too low for our technology to work. So, all right, so that one's out, but at least we looked at, right? It was looked at. All those ideas that come in, you want to chase it, see if, you know, once it goes down the rabbit hole, leave it. You know, there's no sense of burning down that. So, you know, we want to look at these other technologies, things out there, but we're going to test them. And if the Tri Lakes or 14 Mile Creek wants to try something else in conjunction with Adams County, like up on those ditches or whatever, just get a planning grant and get a plan for it and then implement. But the state of Wisconsin and our codes for grants, you can't just get $100,000 to try something. You have to have a plan. So this is what you're going to do. This is how we plan, or what we're going to get carbonaceous material and these boxes at these power utility sites. We've got permission from the farmers, but it's all worked out.
Right.
Now you can
gotta get deep into the methodology.
Yeah. Then you come in and say, we want, you know, $100,000 or $150,000 to try this. Now we can move. Or you want to do, if there's an alum treatment or something like that, you gotta have a plan. That's state law. You know, that's, even if it's a no-brainer, you still have to have a plan. So, but that's where, if you want to keep pursuing phosphorus within the lake, then I strongly recommend come up with a plan for that. Because right now, when I look at your numbers out there every year, they're cringeworthy. And it's because the nitrogen. We're talking 0.3 parts per million to sustain algae blooms for nitrogen. As long as inorganic nitrogen. So that's your nitrates and ammonia. That's the only type of form of nitrogen these plants can use. They can't use organic nitrogen. They can't use any nitrogen gas or sunk in, but not anything that's going to make a difference. You have the inorganic nitrogen is what fuels plants and algae. If you got 0.3 parts per million in your surface water, that's enough to sustain algae blooms. You know, yes, it needs that phosphorus, but you still need that nitrogen. You guys are oftentimes 10 times higher than that in the water going over the dam. So it's just not a phosphorus thing here. You guys are nitrogen driven.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Thanks so much, Scott. It's really a great presentation. But I actually had a few questions, if I could just take a few minutes of your time. Number one, is there legacy nitrates? Is that even a thing?
Kind of. When you hear us say internal loading, what we're talking about is nitrogen phosphorus that's coming up out of the sediments. And you can basically, it's real similar to legacy. It's stuff that's been left over for years, right? Do you have is there legacy nitrogen in the streams? I'd say no, that's groundwater. Just because your groundwater is so enriched with nitrogen, it's got a constant source. You know, we look at those the groundwater samples that were 70 parts. I know there's higher numbers out there. But that and all these drainage districts, all the drainage districts out there, groundwater is so connected to surface water and essential sands that you cannot manage a body of water without looking at them both. And when we see how those high nitrogen in the groundwater, it is not only getting into drinking water, it is getting into the ditches and getting to the stream. So in your stream, the ditches being so sandy for the most part, it's pretty hard to keep nitrogen and phosphorus there. It's going to want to move. It doesn't have the soft sediments that it likes to cling to. And nitrate is usually snapped up right away by plants and algae in the streams during normal growing season periods. Like right now, it's not. So you should probably, we'll see our highest nitrogen numbers in streams now. The time you apply the fertilizer in the spring, through the summer, it takes a while to hit the water table. It flows really slow towards the drainage ditch. When the cooler months start, we don't have the biological activity. So right now, there's high nitrogen going in. Hopefully those reservoirs at the cranberry marsh are intercepting a bunch of it. Did I even come close to answering your question, Karen?
Well, kind of. Basically, I guess I'm trying to find out. So nitrogen is in water or in the ground?
Both. It's in both places. It's in the groundwater and surface water at high levels.
Okay, and the other thing I wanted to know is, so what is the percentages, and I know this you're not going to be able to answer, but I'm still going to ask it. So what is the percentages of what you think the lake owners are putting in compared to what you think that agricultural people are contributing? Are we contributing similar amounts? Are we, is one more than the other? I guess I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, so there's been, there's all kinds, I hear all kinds of numbers being thrown around. Bottom line is this: from the last study back in the early 2000s kind of shows about a 50-50 break, right? 50% coming from internal loading and shoreline, the other 50% from up in the watershed. Across the state, it could be as high as 80 to 90% of your nitrogen contamination is coming from ag. If the lakes didn't have houses on it, that'd probably be the case here. But the large number of houses, the green grass, the runoff, that all adds up and it has an impact.
And how about, this kind of goes into that question. So how about the not the wells, the septic systems? I know we have, because we have we have a high concentration of homes on the lake and we are on sand. Do the septic systems, even if they're good and they're working properly, I'm guessing they still contribute, right?
Absolutely, they do. Septic systems do contribute nitrogen and some phosphorus. But remember, you're also, a lot of these homes around here are not year-round residents, and they don't have a typical load that, say, a subdivision would have, or an annual load. So that does help. And the other thing too is a lot of there's so many new systems in, but that are using newer technology now that actually denitrify the water before it goes to the drain field. They're becoming more common on the lakes because they have to be. That number one, when you use this other technology, you can reduce the size of the system. You can fit them in on these smaller lots, or you got all that buried organic stuff that you can't put a system on, so you got to dig that out. So by necessity, some folks have put these in now, and that's definitely going to help. But before anybody goes to the point where saying, "Oh, we need to put in a treatment plant," nobody goes there at all until you have a good study that identifies just how much nitrogen is coming from and phosphorus is coming from septic systems. If it's 10% of the total load, then you don't go spend millions of dollars on a treatment plant, and you can use a fraction of that money up in the watershed to eliminate more nitrogen, right? It just doesn't make any economic sense. I'm sorry.
I was going to say the last question, because I don't want to take up your whole time with all my questions. But the last question is, so if I'm trying to encourage people, which I do, to do what we want them to do, healthy plant, healthy native plantings and all that, they're gonna say to me, and they have said to me, well, why don't we have bad algae blooms every year? So if we're contributing as much as we're contributing. And so, I guess the contributions would be the same from both agriculture and us. So, and we have certain events that are worse than others.
Excellent question, Karen. So it's just not the nutrient levels that control algae growth, right? It's the weather conditions has a lot to do with it. Last 2021 was a bad summer for lakes. We had algae blooms from Lake Superior all the way down the Illinois border. Some on lakes that never had them before ever. Other years you have bad algae blooms on the tri-lakes every year. It's just not in that spot. These channels, they have a lot of blue-green algae issues every year. Some years are worse than others. You could have certain bays that, because of wind direction from storms or a big flooding event, can totally change the location of these blooms. They're not always lake-wide. Even the big ones out on Pete and Mount Castle Rock are not lake-wide. They might be several square miles in size, but one part of the shoreline can look, one part of the east side can look great. If you have an east wind, the west side will look great if you have a west wind. So, I guess the point that I'm trying to make is, it's great people are trying to connect things, but be careful with anecdotal accounts of where I don't see a blue-green algae bloom out here this year, so it must be pretty good. Somebody at a different part of that lake could be, in green gross water.
Well, that's why we need better tools to help, explain things to the public. I think that's what we're looking for from any governmental body, is to give us either good data or good tools so that we can then show them. And that's all we do, is kind of pass on information to the public to let them know. Because we're trying to convince them, always, that we're part of the problem. So we need to have the best tools we can to get that message across. So that's why I guess.
It's a good idea. I mean, a lot of folks, there's tons of information how to prevent it, but there's not tri-lake specific information on that's real, or real time, I should say. You could have great shoreline and then another part of lake suffering and people don't understand that. So that's a good point to bring up. We could probably work on something with that.
Yeah, the maps and all. Those are the kind of things that, and it's kind of like weather. It's like from day to day it changes. So we have to have that kind of information. I mean, convincing people that they're the problem isn't easy.
No, nobody likes a finger get pointed at.
No, yeah. And they get a little defensive, so.
Gotta figure out how to say it nicely.
We do, but they still, we're trying to get them to take action. So that's hard.
And it is, that's the most challenging part. It's no different than talking to multi-generational farmers, right? You're not gonna go in there and tell them once this is how you do it, or you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
It's a method of repetition with the message. And cooperation, working together. If one side gets excited, everything shuts down.
Thank you.
You guys are on the right path. 14 Miles been doing a wonderful job. You guys are, you're not doing anything wrong. The only thing I can tell you is you're expecting too much too soon. But everything else, you guys are, it's a model group.
We just need more of us.
How we do?
Yeah, absolutely. More of you and more good work. Less nitrogen, less phosphorus. Yeah, and I know you're not supposed to available buy nitrogen or use nitrogen, or excuse me, phosphorus in your fertilizer. But anybody that tells you, or anybody thinks that there's no phosphorus being used. It's crazy. I mean, I can go to Walmart and get triple 10 anytime I want. And it's cheaper than the 20s and the phosphorus free. So, and it does a good job.
Question, we have a lawn fertilizer brochure out there that doesn't have anything, that says nothing about nitrogen. Do we need to update that?
Yeah, any fertilizer.
Okay. So no nitrogen at all?
Yep.
Okay.
And I gotta tell you, that's part of that is Wisconsin's fault for decades talking phosphorus only. I mean, for
It would
Pete's
be
sakes,
nice.
Missouri's got it figured out.
You know, our recommendations call for a slow release fertilizer too, and it's really hard to identify that when you're
Yeah,
looking at bags, you know, other than the Milorganite, I don't really know.
well,
Yeah.
commercial fertilizers are gonna.
I mean, I know they have some that's encapsulated and stuff, but trying to find that, and identify it and stuff, it's tough.
That commercial fertilizers are made to release that stuff fast, not spoon feed it. I mean, when you're putting nitrogen down, most of the time it's ammonium nitrate. It's almost solid nitrogen, and it's in the form that the plant can use right away. So what the plant doesn't take up gets in the root system, gets past the root system, it's gone. It's in your lake.
Especially on your turf.
Yeah, exactly. What's the root zone on that turf? Well, like this.
Yeah.
That's all you got to intercept all that, you know, whereas in a natural shoreline like Karen brought up, you got roots all the way down to the water table. So it's a great filter.
That's really surprising too in the central sand. I know there have been some studies done out of peripherally and one with USGS, but how much of the water is lateral flow in these ditches? It's groundwater. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's upwards of 70–80% oftentimes.
In the ditches, it's 100% some of these ditches.
I mean, you know, people look at a drainage ditch and they think, oh, it's capturing surface water. But
Not all here.
It really is.
No. All here, this is, when you see drainage ditches out in like Pittsville and stuff like that, that's collecting that runoff and it flashes that stuff out. All these ditches from here to Stevens Point and down south, those are cut to drain groundwater. That's it. They're there to cut drain water, not drain surface water. And it works.
I have a question. Sorry, I just am really curious. I have a question about the high cap wells. Do they play a part in any of this?
Well, I don't know if that is such a loaded question, Karen. It depends. All right, so if you irrigate and you add a lot of chemical and you irrigate a lot, whether it's grass or corn, you're going to get more leaching. Now, when they irrigate, what farmers have been doing, what they're starting to do is they get nitrogen credits. So the groundwater has so much nitrogen in it that when they pump up that water to irrigate their corn or potatoes, whatever, they can use that nitrogen that's in the groundwater. It's already in a nitrate form. The plants will snap it up right away. And then if they put that in, if they combine that or include that in their nitrogen budget for the year, they don't have to add as much nitrogen. So if every irrigator practiced nitrogen credits, that would be great. That would be the fast one, a real quick way to reduce the amount of nitrogen being applied. So in that way, irrigation, if they're practicing with nitrogen credits, that's actually gonna, I mean, if they employ that, that would help. If they don't employ it, then it's just it just increases leaching faster. I think, I was crunching some numbers about a month ago, because I was just, or 2 months ago, maybe, I was just curious. And you can actually get a little bit of a nitrogen credit by sucking the water right out of the lake and put it on your yard. It's got that much nitrogen in it. Not like you get on a egg field, but it'd be kind of It's dubious distinction to be the first lake in the United States with nitrogen credits, but
And just so you know, that's why my cat is dead. So
yeah, they're,
I'm not a fan of using, we don't use the lake water anymore to water our grass. So,
yeah, if you're, you know, if you're sucking the surface water, you're aerosolizing that blue green algae. You're not only putting it on your yard, you're breathing it.
exactly.
A lot of people don't understand. They think they have a cold or allergic reaction. They get the sniffles or itchy eyes. That a lot of times is because of the blue green algae. You know, this.
We won't
There's
be encouraging that in our discussions.
a campground on, was it Feetle Cats Rock? I can't remember. And they had a store there, and when the algae blooms were bad, everybody was coming in and buying all the, you know, all the allergy stuff and the cold medicine. They thought they were just getting the flu or something, or some of their respiratory stuff. No, it was blue green algae.
I think that is a good tool, speaking of tools, to get people to do something. When it affects people's health, I think they're more encouraged to take an action.
Absolutely, Kara. It's when you're the most common blue green algae out on the Tri-Lakes is microcystis.
Right.
And it produces a microcystin toxin, but in order to produce that toxin, it's very nitrogen expensive for those cyanobacteria. So they have to have abundant nitrogen to make toxin. The more nitrogen you have, the easier it is for them to make toxin. So it's just another reason to curb the nitrogen use.
Hey, Scott,
Yeah.
can you hear me? It's Scott Bordeaux.
Yes, Mr. Bordeaux.
Happy New Year.
That's
Hey.
you.
Thanks, Scott, for your presentation. A couple of quick questions. So you're mapping the buried organics. Is that, are you trying to get an idea how much are being spent through your process?
Just try to, actually, if you could think of it as a volume, how much of that muck is out there and to what depth and relative to groundwater. That's what we really want to know. Well, that's what Scott really wants to know.
Okay, so is that stuff, or another way I'm going to ask it, is that stuff being used up?
Oh, is the carbon being used in that case? It's, you got to have carbon there, but the carbon, yeah, you're going to have some carbon dioxide, but not nearly as much what was lost by draining that.
Okay.
You lost millions of tons of carbon to the atmosphere when they started draining all these marshes out here for putting in the drainage districts and the drainage ditches. Millions of tons of carbon. They had to go somewhere, went up in the atmosphere.
Went up, yeah. Okay.
We don't,
And then-
soil health is one thing, we heard that from us in ag. That's we can sequester so much carbon by putting it back in the ground if we did certain, just by doing tilling, changing the way we till soil.
Yeah, I'm on with that one. And then, so I'm hearing you say a 14-mile watershed might want to focus more efforts on nitrogen than on phosphorus is kind of the short story that you've kind of told. Is that
Right, phosphorus is always a hot one. So we have to do something. We got to monitor phosphorus and control phosphorus as part of the TMDL, and part of the 9 key element plan. But we got to consider nitrogen more than what we have then. We don't ignore phosphorus, but we have to stop ignoring nitrogen. Keep our level of monitoring going, or our acts up for the reduced phosphorus. We definitely want to do that. We don't want to just toss in the wind, but that is not the big driver now.
Yeah.
For the lakes, for the Wisconsin River TMDL, yes. For the lakes, no.
Yeah, until we have, yeah, we're under the TMDL for phosphorus. I get that. Okay.
Yeah, and the 9T is for phosphorus and nitrogen
Yep.
for both, and that's what we're gonna do. Or I should say the county's gonna,
Kyle, yeah,
and
okay, cool.
Scott,
Thank you.
why don't we have a trophic state index for nitrogen if it's so.
because nitrogen wasn't a problem.
Right. Couldn't that be developed and
Yeah, you could definitely, but I mean, by the time every PhD in technology got done with their, you were looking decades from now before that would come up.
it might be nice to be able to classify lakes.
It's an excellent idea,
Eutrophic or.
a nitrogen CSI, but like around here, when I was going to college, it was like this phosphorus.
Okay.
And it, they're gonna say, well, these lakes are phosphorus limiting. They probably are. Most lakes are in Wisconsin where they already got enough nitrogen. They just need that little bit of phosphorus to boom. But we don't look at that nitrogen phosphorus ratio throughout the whole year. And when during the summer, during the growing season, you can easily flip those nitrogen phosphorus ratios around. But we don't ever think about that. You'll see it a lot on some lakes like over by Wisconsin or Mississippi River, those oxbow lakes. They'll flip 2 or 3 times a year from nitrogen to phosphorus limiting. And we don't, like Citizen Lake Monitoring Network, we don't sample nitrogen, right? We don't pay for that. It's not part of it. It's just phosphorus and chlorophyll A. Yeah. It's that we got this big, huge 8,000 pound gorilla in the room that we just keep feeding and we don't talk about.
Yeah, we wouldn't have known if we hadn't added it to the addition, to CLMN
Right.
monitoring 2 years ago.
Right. So actually, I've been using you guys as not a guinea pig, but I'm definitely throwing you guys, gotta be doing what Tri-Lakes is doing across the state, different areas of the state.
Example. We're a good
Yes.
example.
A good example, yeah. And, it's, so they're looking at adding nitrogen to a few lakes this year on CLMN. Now, we're gonna continue using the grant.
Yep, right, for the next
Right.
2.5 years.
But, if we're seeing valuable data, valuable use, we can continue that next year. Or after the grant goes, maybe, I don't know. But I was just talking to Katie today, Hein, about that, and she said they want to do a few lakes this year where they add nitrogen and then see how it goes. Because it's cost. There's a lot of money. It's not cheap.
It's very little additional work for the.
No additional work. If you're grabbing a phosphorus sample, you got your nitrogen sample. It's just running your analysis in the lab. It costs money.
I have a question. Once the nitrogen is in the water, like it is right now, can nothing be done? I mean, there's no proactive.
Oh, you mean like using alum on phosphorus, but something with nitrogen?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, anything that like that. Yeah, exactly. We're doing healthy lakes. I mean, we're promoting that.
Yeah.
What else? I mean, is that it? Is that our only option?
Well,
Or-
you're right, other than limiting the amount of nitrogen you apply, number one, but adding something to the water to bind up nitrogen, not that I'm aware of. I don't know if Old West knows of something, but typically you would, you could try some denitrification things, but it'd be the scale you're talking about would be, there's no way you could physically do it. It'd have
So
to
in
be
other words,
huge.
you couldn't put like bark chips all over the shoreline and hope that would help.
No, probably not as
Okay.
much as we'd like it to, just because some of that nitrogen is getting in the ground, it's already gonna be below the ordinary high water mark when it comes in, so on the streams probably, and the ditches probably, but unless you got a real sloppy, wet shoreline, probably not.
Thank you.
Hey, Scott,
That's the last of your slides, isn't it, Scott?
Yes.
Any more questions for Scott?
yeah, Scott. One
Yeah.
more. You were talking before a little bit about drain tile at the end of drain tile, where you could possibly put some materials to do some denitrification.
Yeah,
So that might be a way. Again, that's just kind of the Band-Aid approach, but that would be a way to grab some nitrates off of a drain tile, correct?
absolutely. That's
Okay.
what we talked about that a little earlier, and when we get working on that 9 key element plan, because it is a neat 9 key element plan, you're also able to get federal dollars through grants, and that can be used to develop a plan to implement some of these out there. That I'm kind of Jones to do try that, so it'd be nice to work with Kyle on that. But it's going to take landowner cooperation. This is why having good relations with everybody is so important.
Thanks, Scott.
Anything, go ahead. Because otherwise, I got to be in Cashton by 5 o'clock. So I got to get going pretty quick.
Yes, you do.
Was there another topic that we were going to talk to Scott about? Like the extra monitoring area along the ditches or?
Oh,
I guess it's a question, should we add sampling at that time?
well,
Or there's a culvert right there too, you know, when the lateral comes up for the tile.
there's probably going to be some sampling going on anyway, so I won't worry about it. Why not? Not probably. Yeah, so don't worry about that. We got it. And part of that is because
It's just, usually to find the tile outlets are difficult, but certainly not that. It's not when there's a big white.
but
piece of
that,
cement.
we're going in all over. That's the new thing now. And I was like,
I just couldn't believe, like, I went out and stuff before Christmas just because I wanted to kind of get a feel for the snowfall, and I couldn't believe the volume that was being pumped. It has on here. There hadn't been any precipitation for a while. It was cold out and it's still.
right, and you know, when I first saw it, I was,
Have to.
and everybody's like, said, oh shit, this is gonna be a PR nightmare. You know, and it's like, well, you know, could be a good thing if we can turn that into a point source. Not, I should have said that. If we can turn it into a congregated source and maybe employ some of that technology there.
Wait, why did you say you can't say it's a point source?
Because it gets into a whole bunch of legal issues with the Clean Water Act at the federal level. Because if it's a point source, then it's you'd be mandated to have a pollutant discharge elimination systems permit, like a treatment plant kind of thing. And drain tile is not considered a point source. So using the non-point source and point source have distinctive legal definitions.
Thanks.
Okay, well, thanks.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you guys. Keep up the good work. Anna, Rachel. All you guys. And Oldenburg, if you're still listening, I don't know if you're still on or not.
Like it's still
Yep,
on,
he's
yeah, I was gonna
with us.
remind him he's on the.
I don't know if he's got
social
anything
networks
to add or not. Usually he's a pretty good critic. He might be in his chair, but he's my go-to guy on a lot of stuff. What he does the Excel spreadsheet, Rachel does the PowerPoint. Let's put it that way.
He said, Scott, you nailed it. Good job.
You don't have any criticism?
Nope, just praise.
Oh, I'm sure. Ooh,
You're doing great.
Not public criticism.
yeah. I don't care what Colton says. I'll make him do some crappy work.
Don't let him get to you, Colton.
He's been my guardian angel, so.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Scott.
thank you
Have a
guys.
safe
Keep
trip.
up the great work.
Let's move on to finance. I'll give Barb the floor and then she can pass it on. Thanks, guys.
Just a couple of things. Bob Binkowski and myself did an audit of the 2021 books that Phil has done this past year, and there were no issues at all. He's done a great job documenting it, so he's out of trouble, and so are we.
I won't be sent to jail.
Yeah, and he's gonna follow up with filing the 990 report with the IRS, so that takes care of our legal requirements. The other thing I wanted to mention is on the tree and shrub sale, we've gotten a number of orders in the past week, close to $400 worth of orders. So it's good to see that. The deadline will be the end of the month, but I did put a preliminary order in without paying for it, but just for what the orders that we've received so far, so that they'll set that aside. We won't have an issue with not being able to get the product.
Can I say something real quick? You know, you did such a great job with that, Barb. Perhaps we should consider like doing native plantings next or something to get people to plant, you know, native plantings. Because I think once you give them, you know, something that's easy to do, they might be more inclined to do it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, something for the future.
Great job.
Okay. Bill, is there any more? From you after Barbara says you did mowing down, keeping the books since last year.
Well, thanks for your comments. No,
Okay. Okay, next is partnership development. That falls primarily in Don's lap, but we do have our speakers lined up for February and March. We'll get to that a little later in the agenda. So should we move on to lake reports? Anybody have anything? I do for sure would, if nobody else. Anything? Go ahead, Kamala. At our Lakeshore Property Owners meeting on Saturday, we had a couple of candidates who were interested in serving in the Tri-Lakes vacancy. We interviewed candidates, and the directors voted and selected Brad Adkins as the next Tri-Lakes representative to be appointed to fill the vacancy that was created by Scott Fitzgerald. This still has to be approved by the Tri-Lakes board at the meeting on Wednesday the 12th at 9 a.m. in this room. So we're hoping that goes smoothly. I have gotten some feedback from at least one of the Tri-Lakes board members that there might be some resistance to approving our democratic process. So I just would, this time it might be Lake Sherwood, next time it might be another lake, but I would urge anybody who is interested in our lake property owners having autonomy and self-determination to attend that meeting and try to influence the board if needed to follow through with the wishes of the property owners.
When is that?
This Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Meeting is this Wednesday at 12.
At 9 a.m. Okay.
And if I might add something, I will be there as well discussing the beach club project that we just completed for the Tri-Lakes. So if you want to hear anything about that, I'll be there.
All right, great.
Well,
Yeah.
And Jerry will be, I'll be there to introduce Brad. We'll see how that goes. The one other thing is this Saturday, the 15th, is our Lake Sherwood Fishery. Went out yesterday in the cold and put up the banners. Maybe you've seen those on Highway 13 now. So hope people will participate in that. If you're a fisherman, come out and enjoy the contest. If you're not a fisherman, come out anyway and buy some raffle tickets, because that's where the raffle tickets is really where our profit comes from. We don't make any profit really on the tournament itself. That's just fun family event, so.
How much ice you got?
I don't know yet. There's probably making something last
Been
night
making-
and tonight,
been
so.
making.
I mean, I'm seeing a lot of ATVs, snowmobiles and shacks and even some trailers going up, but I haven't actually been out there to see if I want to take a vehicle out there by this weekend or
I
not.
was surprised that somebody hasn't tried it.
Yeah,
Gotta be getting close to a foot or better.
I think it ought to be getting close to that foot threshold.
They are taking trucks out on Big Rush Creek.
Are they?
I have seen that this year. Yeah.
Okay, so by Thursday we'll be good.
Don't quote me.
I don't take any liability for that statement. So anyway, with the raffle sales too, that's our one annual fundraiser. And if we do real good on our ticket sales, we end up making the neighborhood of $3,000 to $3,500. That all goes into our conservation program for fish stocking and fish habitat. We do some other conservation related things, but the fishery all goes to the fish side of things. Fish habitat. So. Town, county, I guess I'll defer to you, Jerry. You have anything? Town, county, or Tri-Lakes? You're out.
As far as the town goes, we've been fortunate enough to sell some property over in the business park. We've improved sale for 2 acres, which is 2 acres behind the Pretzel facility. And 1.2 acres to town road county or country meats and deli, which is going to be going in come spring. And Bison Treaty bought another acre to expand their operation. Also approved operating plan for Lakes Inn to rent out UTVs and non-motorized vehicles, kayaks and paddleboards and so from there. Lakes Inn facility. Other than that, I have nothing. Dry Lakes there covered by being subject there, and that's our Sherwood representative. I don't have anything on the county.
Okay, thank you. That about wraps everything up then. Our next meeting is scheduled for February 14th. Annual budget and planning meeting, so we can come well prepared for that. And then March 14th, we'll have Pat Oldenburg on the agenda to give us an overview and update on the TMDL. So can you acknowledge or send us a chat, Pat, that you're still good for the 14th of March? Well, I'm assuming Pat must be away from.
I can send, yeah.
We'll double check. We will confirm well ahead of time. with Pat, so. Okay, any other business? Hearing none, move to adjourn. I move to adjourn. We have a motion to adjourn second. And I know we all will pass that motion.
Thank you to everybody who joined us
Thank you.
online today. If you have any last questions, feel free to voice them now or throw it in the chat. I'll be closing down the meeting here in just another minute or so.
And thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Yes,
Always
thank
glad to help.
Thanks, everybody. This is Tracy Hames from Wisconsin Wetlands Association. Good presentation by Scott today, so looking forward to seeing more of that.
Thanks for joining us, Tracy.
Have a good fishery, Dave.
Thank you.
Take care all.